Hello, Steve White, Steve Arts 89. Well, a few years ago, within the same year, both my mother and father died, and I realised I didn't know a lot about them. I knew more about my mother, but I didn't know anything about my dad. Even though I'd lived with him until I was a teenager, and my parents split, he didn't really communicate, didn't really talk. I didn't know much at all about him, just a couple of little things he mentioned, and that's it. And after he passed, I felt like I needed information. And then when my mother passed, I realised I knew her well as an adult, but I didn't really know how she grew up, how my parents met, what they were like when they were teenagers, when they were young in their 20s before they started having kids. I sort of knew them from sort of the 70s onwards, because I sort of heard a lot about stuff just in the last 10 years or so, since my brothers and sisters were sort of, old enough to sort of remember stuff. But I didn't really know much about when they first met in the, I think they got married in the 50s and they started having kids in the 60s, and 70s and 80s. So it's just kind of weird. And I was asking my sister who wouldn't have known them. And my brother had two brothers and a sister. Both the older, I think they were older. The older brothers had died. The sister was still alive, and that was Aunt Peg. And then there was one of the wives of my father's brothers. I'm not sure which one. I think Bill's wife was still alive. So they might have known a bit about if her husband had talked about growing up, she would sort of know about not just him but my dad. So I thought I should talk to her, and I should talk to Peg because that's the sister. She would have grown up with him and everything. But he'd only my mother hadn't long passed, and they were fairly good friends. Peg, who I was going to call first, was friends with my mum, and they kept talking and stayed in touch right up until my mum passed. I heard two things from one of my relatives, was that she had problems remembering, but it wasn't, it was more like she couldn't remember recent things. She was having trouble with new memories. She could remember old memories. So in theory, there wouldn't have been any problem with asking her about her childhood and growing up and stuff like that. But she may repeat herself or forget, what was happening today or something like that. So, but there was still a chance that I could find out stuff about my dad. So I was going to call her, but I kind of felt like, my mother, her friend, had just passed, and her brother had passed like a year ago. I thought maybe I should wait a bit, and I sort of procrastinated. And also, I was under the impression that she was being taken care of by, I think her son. And I sort of thought, well, how am I going to explain to him why I want to talk to his mum? He doesn't know who I am. I don't think he's ever met me or knows who I am. How does he know I'm not just some con man trying to talk to his mum and get her to give him his money or a bank account or something, I just sort of felt like I don't know how to explain, to this guy. And I just sort of procrastinated and I didn't do it. And I kept putting it off. And then I sort of realised a few months ago, wow, I still haven't done that. It's been years. And she's getting older. I probably should do that. And then I was speaking to one of my relatives today, and I found out that she died 6 months ago. So I'm fairly upset because that was my last chance to find out about my father's life from someone who actually knew him. And not many people knew him, I don't think. I think he had a couple of friends, but I think they're all passed. And he was mostly just family man. He went to work, he came home, he drank, he went to bed, he went to work the next day. He had a few friends down at the pub, but I didn't know any of them, and it's sort of hard to, find people like that. So I just didn't know what to do. My mum had a few friends that she was friends with as an adult around the town. I think some of them were still alive, but I wasn't sure. But yeah, I put it off, I procrastinated. I just felt like I would be bothering her. I sort of thought, I don't want to call her up and ask her questions about her brother who's passed and her friend who's passed, and maybe she'd like to talk about them. Maybe it'd be nice to remember. Maybe it might make her sad, and I don't want to upset her. And I thought maybe her son would probably think that would upset her, and he maybe wouldn't want me to talk to her about her dead friends and dead brother. So I just never did it, and now it's too late, and I may never know anything about my father. And his life growing up and anything, and it's just, I really regret that. So I needed some YouTube therapy to talk about it for a minute, and I sort of just wanted to put it out there for anyone watching this who's in a similar situation. Do not wait. I think you're better off accidentally upsetting someone or bothering someone than never knowing whether it was a bother and never getting the answers for yourself and then regretting, not doing that. So I regret this now. I should have called her right away. I should have maybe waited, a couple of weeks or something. I think it had been a few months since my mum had passed, but it wasn't that long. So I regret procrastinating. Don't do it. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Thanks. Don't put off tomorrow what you can do today.